episode of How I Wrote This. Uh, today we're talking with screenwriter Nick Tassoni. So basically, the way we do this is a sort of a Q&A session, just about the craft, the industry, um, and also we'll have a little bit of time to talk about student projects.
Great.
Uh,
Thank.
so. Mhm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just gonna share a little bit about. So Nick is a screenwriter based in Los Angeles, originally from south of Boston. In addition to having written Lure, Nick is currently writing a contained horror film titled ICEBOX and is developing Silk with Bert Kern. Prior to switching to writing full time, he was an assistant at Universal Studios and Industry Entertainment. He holds an MFA in screenwriting from USC School of Cinematic Arts, and he wrote one of the best scripts from the blacklist of this past year, phenomenal feature horror film, Lure. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about this today.
Thank you
Connor,
for having me. Thank you for that.
thanks. Welcome. And Conor Kyle has written for Shudder's Creepshow and placed twice in the Nickel Fellowship with his scripts Peter and the Wolves, quarterfinals, also Launchpad Top 10, and The Tube semifinals. His screenplays have also been featured on special sections of the annual hit list, Young and Hungry list, Spec Book, and on Tracking Board's Best Writers of the Year booklet. He writes everything from stage musicals to westerns to horror movies, and you can view a few more of Connor's screenwriting videos here on whatever channel you're watching, whether it is Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and yeah, take it away, Connor.
Thanks, Nacho. This is Nacho, by the way, our wonderful co-founder at Script Camp. So I'm Connor. Thank you, Nick, for being here. This is so fun and exciting because we loved reading lore, and I love monster movies, and that's what I grew up watching. And why don't we just start with fun stuff like favorite creature features, right? Like, I think if you've got them ready to go, just what do you think most influential favorite monster movies?
For sure. My couple favorites are obviously Godzilla. It's a treat to see -1 out right now, which kicked ass. Alien is probably one of the biggest influences for me. Jurassic Park. And then sort of on the opposite end of that spectrum, I blame James Gunn for a lot of the issues I had as a kid because his movie Slither really messed me up. And I hadn't watched it again until recently, and I loved it this time. And he gave me a fear of like monsters and stuff as a child. So I'm just catching up on all my monsters now, basically, which is why I'm so into them.
Great. For me, I think I'm going with The Thing. That's got to, like, Carpenter has to be on the list. I'm going to say The Mist as well. Amazing movie. And if we're doing I feel like we don't need to do 3 necessarily, but I might put The Host, the Korean movie, is really good with the big fish monster thing. Or maybe have you seen The Ruins?
I have not seen The Ruins, but I brought my pen and pad and I'm taking notes today. So
yeah, that's a really, really gross plant monster type movie with some cool stuff in it. I won't spoil too much if you haven't seen it yet, but worth checking out. Pretty creative and.
How gross is gross when you say gross? Because I have a limit with gross.
It's definitely got some body horror, like monster infiltrating your body kind of stuff going on. Like some squicky, bloody knife stuff. It's one of the grosser movies I've seen in a theater, definitely, and far too young, certainly, when it came out. It was one of those formative experiences where your parents somehow let you go to the movie. But yeah, that one I would check if you have a limit on gross. Maybe not your favorite, but it's got some cool stuff in it. Check that one out.
So here's my thing, and it's funny as a horror writer who writes gore and stuff. I faint at gore. Like,
really?
I literally have the fainting response to gore, and it's not just like if a head gets chopped off or like someone's guts explode or something. That's like totally fine if it's sort of like generic gore, but like once we get into eyeballs and joints and bones popping out and stuff, like I literally will conk out on the couch or in the theater, wherever I'm at. It happened on the bus a couple times while watching videos. It's happened at work. It's been unpleasant experiences.
But you couldn't even watch your own movie then, because you have bones popping out. You've got the gross stuff going on in this one, right?
That's a good point, but I think it's almost like therapeutic to write it out. It's like forcing me to experience it, and then if I know exactly what's coming, I can brace for it, and I can maybe have a cookie earlier that like gives me the blood sugar that I need to be able to
That
work
makes sense.
through that moment. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, Stephen King has talked before about how he writes about terrible things happening because it's almost like drawing a magic circle around that thing and saying, now this can't hurt me because now I understand and can control that thing more. Do you feel sort of the same way about it?
Yeah, it'd be way easier to just go to therapy, but I have to write scripts.
Yeah,
about it,
men will literally write a hit spec script instead of going to therapy, is the, the world that we're in.
But yes, 100%. I feel like writing is sort of its own sort of method of doing that, because I like to write what scares kid me, and I like to write what scares adult me. And so, like, really meshing those two together, it makes you confront a lot in a way that is sort of like, what's the word? Like, accessible, I guess. Like, I go at my own pace with it, you know?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's like a way of wrangling it. And, like, if you're the one in charge, then you can't lose control of it.
What scares you?
What scares me? Deep ocean. I can't even write about it. Like, I don't even think I could write a deep ocean scary movie. Like, especially underwater caves. That's just like, is there anything scarier than being in an underwater cave? I haven't thought of it yet. So for
There was a script a couple years ago called Apex, which was about a group of kids navigating through an underwater cave with a shark.
Oh yeah. There were a couple scripts called Apex on that same list. I feel like that one of the several Apexes. I don't think I even read it. Too scary. I can't do it. I can't do underwater stuff. But that's the line. I feel anything before that I can find a way to manage. But deep ocean's just something like too primordial about it.
I love that. I love the ocean. I was sort of raised on like a coastal city, so we'd go out on boats and fish and stuff all the time. I think it's fascinating and fun. So I'd love to do some sort of deep ocean thing at some point.
Okay, well I can't watch it. I will pee my pants, and then it will be a terrible experience for everyone. So I guess we both have. You gotta draw your line somewhere. You have to have a limit or certain things that you don't want to engage with or don't want to write about. Like for instance, I don't really like writing things like sexual assault. Also. Are there other topics that you don't want to breach, even in horror as well?
Yeah, personally, I don't think I have anything wild enough to say in the realm of like politics to actually write like a full like 90 to 120 pages on it. I feel like everything's been said, and 90% of people have their minds made up already, and you're either going to piss them off or just have them nod along with you. Like if you can write something that's going to change minds, like sweet. Like I'm super pumped for Alex Garland's Civil War coming up.
Me too.
But I'm skeptical about whether or not it's going to say anything new. I think it might, because they have this thing where like it seems like California and Texas have banded together.
Right.
So if they can do that, that'd be fun. And if it makes me think something new about American politics, awesome. Like, but you know, I think most things around politics tend to just go with a lane that's there. Sort of.
Right, you're either preaching to the choir or you are driving away another audience that you could potentially be entertaining. So it's such a tricky line to walk.
It looks cool though.
It does look cool. I honestly, it's a really risky, bold movie to make, and I think he can. I don't think anyone could handle it, but I think he can handle it. So I do want to see how he tackles it for sure.
Yeah, and I work part-time at Alamo Drafthouse, which if you haven't been is like one of the best like sort of theater chains there are. Like you can get like a beer and a burger sort of, and I see every trailer like a million times a day, so I'm just very tapped into the trailer game. So that has a good trailer.
No kidding. Yeah, A24 trailers usually just kill it.
They usually hit, yeah, for sure.
Let's go into this script itself. So is this a you idea? Is this a manager idea? Is this developed in some other way? How does this one come together?
Yeah, so this was the script that I got repped off of. So this was sort of an original like Nick idea, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it essentially is just like sort of what I said earlier. It's a mix of everything that scares me in life. So like kid Nick was very afraid of the woods and like some big creature getting lost, and like this idea of something that's like almost human, trying to be human, pretending to be human. Like the uncanny valley is something that has always really freaked me out. So kind of started with that as a focal point, and then went into like what scares adult me now? And the answer to that is like, losing a loved one is probably something that really comes to mind. And meshing those together, that's sort of where that character Evelyn comes from. And there's some folks that, from my past that I've witnessed lose children, which was really tough for them. And that's sort of the emotional core of it too. So it really kind of came from what's going to scare me and what do I think could scare an audience, essentially.
Right.
While also having some sort of heart to it.
For sure. So yeah, like when it comes to low budget horror, these movies get made in all kinds of different ways, but I didn't realize this was the script that you got signed off of. And rarely are people actually able to then continue with the script that they signed off of, because so often managers will be like, no, throw it out. Now we're developing my thing. So, or like, let's pick a new thing for us to start over from scratch with. So it's cool to be able to actually move forward, like, onto a list with the thing that you originally signed off of.
Yeah, 100%. It's been a really great experience. Like, I'm super, super happy. I got picked up by Entertainment 360, awesome manager there named Mark, who is just awesome. Love him. And we've been developing it, and there's some folks attached that I can't, like, say a whole lot about right now, but hopefully, fingers crossed, there's a Deadline article this year that I get to share with people. That could be really fun. But
Great.
Having sort of like my baby, like being gestured out into the world now feels like really cool. And it's like, I don't know, it's been fun. It's my first experience with it. So yeah.
Let's talk about the specifics of some of the mechanics of the story and like the rules and things like this, which are always really a point of interest for me when it comes to, I'm a horror writer as well, as you know, and we're always wondering, like, what can the monster do and what can the monster not do? And these things change a lot, especially through development in multiple drafts, and you have to like keep straight, like, okay, no, in this draft it can't actually do that, and things like this. So how did you kind of go about developing the rules and limitations for how the creature in this movie would work?
Yeah, a really cool thing that happened. My girlfriend is a super talented graphic artist, and she put together a fake Wikipedia page for the angler, essentially, just detailing out where it's, like, I did some, like, copy on it, but, like, she put together this really creepy, like, it reads, like, sort of like an SCP article, like,
yeah,
would.
a cryptid.
And it's just, yeah, exactly, and it's just, like, here's what it is, here's where it's from, here's what it can do, here's what it can't do, here are several other victims and stuff, and so that, like, was just, there was a very conscious step to do what can this thing do and what can't it do, and sort of like with how it might get into someone's mind and like read their thoughts in order to show them what like is the most traumatic. We literally went like, okay, there's some sort of electrical receptors on the end of this thing's like lure, but it taps into one specific part of the brain which holds like, in PTSD, like victims, like where trauma is stored, sort of. And we were like, oh, if it taps into that, it's going to get into, like, thematically the most important thing for this person. And that tracks pretty well. So it's like we really went into, like, the biology of what makes this thing do what it can and can't do. And a lot of that, might obviously probably won't hold up under medical scrutiny, but is, like, a good place to start and a good place to actually have.
Yeah, if you look too closely at a lot of monsters and magic, even things like vampires or stuff like that, then you start to see the cracks and seams. I guess, like, for instance, in this one, I might even wonder, like, does it only eat humans, or does it eat animals too? In which case, is it, like, luring animals in the same way?
That's a really good question. I think it does only eat humans, and I think it's because it's sort of, I always have it that it hibernates, essentially, and then when it sort of senses, like, a frontal lobe is nearby or something, it wakes up and is like, how can I get this thing towards me? I feel like
that's cool.
I feel like it's not like intelligent enough to be like, oh, I'm just hunting human, like I'm not interested in like a deer or something. But I also, in like the last 3 things I'd written up to this, like a deer had died in some gruesome way, and I really didn't want to have another deer die.
It's better than having another freaking dog die. Like every time you see a dog in a horror movie, I'm just like, goodbye.
Like, I don't like dogs. I don't like dogs dying, and I don't like cats, which I have 2, and one or two of them might jump up here and join us for a moment. We'll see. They're
I hope so.
random. But cats seem to be the new dogs dying and stuff, and I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it seems just like such a repetitive way to escalate the stakes in such a way that it's like, well, we don't want to make the people panic yet, but we want to make it clear that the monster will kill things, so we just kill the dog first. And they're like, oh no, not Ellie, and then we have to bury Ellie.
Why did you say that name? That was my college dog's name.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
My God.
I read it from the trauma center of your brain, I guess, is how I found it.
That's wild.
But yeah, I love that. So the rules and limitations. This is it's less of an intelligent. It's not like Predator, right? It's
Correct.
Much more sort of animal-ish, and to that extent, I liked how, for instance, like it's not exactly reading people's minds and like exploring their trauma in a very complex way. It's just sort of latches on to something and then kind of repeats that one thing, right? And
Exactly.
it like finds the most painful thing for them and then just does that again and again and again and sort of uses that to draw them in. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, it's just biologically made to get a rise out of you, to get you to want to follow it, essentially. And like that turns out being like the most fucked up thing for the victim, essentially, is like, oh, why'd you have to bring that up? Why couldn't it have been like, a lollipop in the forest or something that I followed? But yeah, right. It's just the way that it's made to like get prey, essentially. So yeah,
through regret almost, right? Like through this idea of the lure is that sense of regret.
It's for us, we honed in a little more on grief over regret, but they're both like very similar sides of like a coin. So that's like that's just like details. But yeah, it latches on to the thing that's always going to be in the back of your mind. Basically.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so when it came to the ending, and so you might imagine that I've talked about this a bit in my classes before, the idea that there's always the obvious ending, and then there's the sort of opposite of there's like the A and there's the B. So with the creature feature or the monster movie, it's like option A, we kill the monster, and the characters win. Option B is the monsters kill the characters and the monster wins. So you landed on this option C, which is always nice to find that kind of other thing. That's sort of like, and in horror, I think we default to, or what we're really looking for is that kind of, not so much a triumphant ending as a haunting ending. Can I ask how you approached going into the ending and trying to find that like element of that kind of ending that will stick with you rather than just being like, oh, we beat the monster, good job, go home?
Yeah, totally. I think I wanted it to come from, I didn't want it to be just a wrapped up, nice and neat, now that I defeated this thing, I'm over my daughter's like death, like that.
Because I killed a monster.
That just doesn't sit right. And I think her arc was to keep going on, essentially. And I think it was sort of trying to find a middle ground of like, it's a line somewhere near the end where it says like, I'm not really okay right now, but I think eventually I might be. I think that's what it is. It's sort of like a slow, steady process to like healing. I had someone who lost a loved one tell me, you have this hole in your heart that is that person like shaped, and you never, that never goes away or gets filled, but it's about living with that and dealing with that, essentially.
Right. It's
that, and that it's about being able to continue on while still keeping that with you.
Yeah, I think that's what you sort of illustrated throughout the movie. As we, like, at the start, we emphasize she has these two things with her, right, which is the flask, her coping mechanism, and then you have the doll, which is kind of another coping mechanism. And then throughout the movie, she chooses to lose both. I don't remember if she actually chooses to lose the doll, but
I think it like sort of falls off as she's being pulled up in the end.
Yeah,
but it was important that she let go of the doll, I think.
Right, exactly. And so what it sort of seemed to me that the arc was saying was that this is about her sort of like not moving on in a clean, perfect way, but sort of moving past the coping mechanisms and finding a way to stop leaning on these other things as a way to act as your crutch through this grief, and finding that strength in herself to keep going. Is that how you saw the arc?
There's no quick, clean, easy way to get over this thing. Just because you lose the doll doesn't mean that you're going to be all good. Like, she goes back to this, sort of coping mechanism, but she's doing it in, I don't want to say a healthier way, but like, maybe a year from now she hasn't visited that place in a while because she's feeling better and better. Maybe a year from now she stumbles and falls down the pit and we get Lure 2 Electric Boogaloo. Like, who knows? It's about what could. It's about what can happen, I guess.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And in such a way that it's not exactly happy or sad. It is that kind of melancholy third thing. That sort of bittersweet ending that says she healed in some ways, but maybe isn't ready to move on in some others yet.
100%, yeah.
So I really like the horror endings that can find that either not necessarily ambiguity, although sometimes ambiguity is helpful, but it's for me ambiguity is mostly annoying. But one that leaves you not with the sense of it's over, we beat it, it's done. Horror stories are not really triumphant stories for the most part, except for religious horror stories, which almost always are, because otherwise would sort of be saying that Satan is stronger than God, I guess, which those filmmakers like don't really want to do. But for the most part, for non-religious horror, I find that the best endings are going to be these ones that leave you with a sense of maybe we won for now, but this is what we like learned, gained, or lost along the way, in such a way that we've kind of like the dramatic argument clarifies not in the characters winning, but in the ways that they maybe don't entirely win.
Yeah, and I've always kind of liked stuff that not necessarily makes you question at the end of it. Like I don't want someone leaving theater and being like, "What did that mean? What did that mean? I don't get it. I don't get it." You want debate as people are leaving the theater. You want them to go get a beer and be like, "No, that meant that. Well, I interpreted it as that. But what does it mean for them? Well, it could mean this. It could mean this." I don't want to spoon feed somebody what the answer is. I want to give them the question and have them come to their own answers, you know?
For sure.
And
for sure.
Their answer to what happens next is interesting. But I do also think I wanted it to make sure that it felt satisfying enough where it's not just going to like cut off like a cliffhanger or something like that. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate reading and your thought that you put into this. Like, yeah, it's making me think about stuff that I hadn't considered. I was just doing a big spooky monster.
He's just doing a big monster. But that's the cool thing is that I guess the nice thing about horror writing is that you can always start from the place of what if there was a green ghoul, and then from there you can sort of fill out the rest of it in such a way that the green ghoul becomes elemental to that character or to like a character arc or to the thing you're trying to say. You like realize what you were trying to say in having a ghoul in the movie or something like that.
It's all about people always forget, it's all about the ghoul. It's all about the ghoul. It's about
the ghoul.
What does the ghoul represent?
Exactly. But you can start with ghoul. You can always start with what if there was a guy that could walk on walls and shoot lasers out of his eyes and have that be like the found, because that's the poster, right? Like that's the title. In horror, the hook is always kind of like has to be front and center. It's called Alien. Yeah. It's not called the thing in space that we eventually like. It's not a mystery what the monster will be in Alien.
Right. It's not people are in. It's not called Space Truckers.
Yeah. Exactly. That does sound cool too. Let me ask about. So I guess I'll finish off with my questions, then we'll open it to the room and see what everybody else wants to ask for the QA. My last question is going to be more kind of very crafty, technically stuff. So, survival thrillers, right? Wilderness survival is its own genre. This is definitely a wilderness survival movie in addition to being a creature feature. And I think, especially in some of the early sequences, we spent a long time. We spent quite a long time watching her simply try to retrieve, or like first of all, fix her broken bone, right? Or then retrieve the air horn, or then cross the river, or just like these kind of taking us through the real visceral physical challenges of wilderness survival seems to be kind of like a key part of this genre, right?
Yeah.
Like we really want them to feel like you just got your leg broken, and now you need to find a way to drag yourself across a ravine or something like this.
Yeah.
But in spending so long on these things, I guess I would ask your opinion or how you went about approaching how long to spend on any of the survival sequences, which because like sometimes they last like 3 or 4 pages, right? Like just trying to accomplish one physical task or just trying to do one thing, and then sometimes it doesn't even work. And I think was that really intentional and strategic? Because like normally we're trained if we spend a long time on something in the movie, it will move the plot forward, or the character will succeed, or they will do the thing they were trying to do. But to me, I think that with wilderness survival, or the way that you were doing it here, I felt that, for instance, like all that work to get the air horn back, and then it's broken. It doesn't work after like 3 pages of work. That sort of sets the precedent.
So I made you read that. Yeah.
No, I think it's great. I think it breaks our normal expectation of how a sequence like that would work, and therefore emphasizes the kind of unforgiving nature of the place where they are. Because if we are expecting, of course that had to work. She spent so long on it. That was so hard. Then that can, and then you divert from that. That can actually set the expectation that, I don't know if she's actually going to make it through this, right? If no matter how long we spend watching the character doing something, they could still fail. it adds that extra level to me. I think this was the intention, to add that extra level of danger and that feeling of, she could falter or fail at any time. So maybe just, I don't know exactly if that's one clean question, but how did you go about like sequences like that and those sort of survival scenes that make up a good portion of the first half of the movie?
Totally. Yeah. I think a big part of what I want to do is set up the stakes of this world, and that this is a place where people can be hurt, where things can fail, where things can go poorly. But I also definitely just wanted to beat the shit out of my main character. I think that's so important, to have someone succeed in the end. If they have an easy ride to get there, it's not going to be as, it's not going to feel as sweet when they finally do get to the hospital and are okay. Like, they should be shivering cold, beaten to a pulp, and then like all that stuff. They should be brutalized, basically. That's just my goal was to beat the character down so that in the end, victory, whatever it was, felt better, really. And I can't think of anything, more frightening in that moment than being like, yes, thank God I got the air horn, and then, oh shit, it's not working. And then I have to go across this frigid, cold river into the unknown, and my radio is busted. Like, it doesn't work the same if she has all those comforts, You got to sprinkle in the comforts, I guess.
Right.
But yeah,
or if everything the character tries always works, then we feel like a little less in danger with them, I guess, or afraid for them.
Yeah, because if you see that that they succeed at this, then you'll skip ahead to the point where, oh, they have it, fine, I get it, like next thing. And it's also sort of about like, throwing in twists here and there. If the audience is expecting the air horn to work, make it not work and see what happens there. Sometimes it's fun to write yourself into corners.
And did you do a bit of research in terms of medical details? Like, you really put it through the ringer, and like, in order to have a character actually be able to get through the whole movie, then I feel like you have to kind of evaluate carefully, like, okay, how much blood has she actually lost and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a bit actually that has been adjusted since then. Like, now that we have some folks like attached to it, her legs like snaps in two a little bit later now, essentially, because it does feel like if you have a compound fracture, there's probably no chance you're able to stand on that whatsoever. But I really just wanted someone in pain. My whole family is a bunch of doctors, so they kept getting a bunch of weird, creepy texts from me every once in a while. Like, could a human be okay if they had a burn like on their chest? Could they be okay if their foot snapped off? Would rubbing alcohol really help this or this? Like, what is like? And they'd be like, Nick, are you okay? Like, what's going on?
Right.
A little bit of research. I did look up essentially like how much blood can like lose and still like be barely alive, and that might have to even be adjusted now still. So a little bit of medical research, but it is probably more on the cinematic side, I guess.
Was it 2 liters that they said at the end? It was like she lost 2 liters, compound fracture, infections, like the works.
Yeah, the works. Yeah, exactly.
So that probably wraps up my major. I mean, I wanted to leave room for the room to ask questions too. Thank you so much for answering these, by the way. Shall we see what the people would like to ask?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. I really appreciate it. I'm totally open to hearing what folks are thinking about.
Great. Let's check the chats.
While people are typing, what have you been watching?
Feel free to add more questions if you guys have any, by the way. I'm just going to scroll up. Looks like if maybe you guys could tag me or Nick in the questions as well, so we can tell the difference between a QA question and just a sort of comment. Oh, okay, here we go. Is horror Nick's favorite genre? If not, what are his top 3?
Yeah, right now horror is my favorite genre because when I was younger, I was in essentially 4th grade, I was staying up late with my family and we were watching Friends on TBS, and everyone else was asleep. And the trailer for Slither came on, and it scared the crap out of me. And this was like just as I was getting into TV, and I was like, "Is this what TV is? Like every once in a while, just some mutant worm zombie is gonna like jump out at me? Like I don't want that." And I just didn't watch TV for like a long time, and I just had a phobia of it. And then essentially just didn't discover horror until I felt like I was ready, sort of late high school, college. And I've just been digging in since then, so I've been obsessed with it because I missed out on so much. But I like horror, and I like sci-fi. That's sort of a subcategory, like kaiju films. Yeah, that's probably really like what I'm into, but I'll watch anything. Like my favorite of last year was The Holdovers, and that's just, straight drama basically. So
Okay, so preferably with monsters and madness in them, but not always. You'll watch
if it has a
anything
monster,
if
you
it's good.
pretty much you got me. But yeah, otherwise, I guess I'll deal with Oscar-worthy writing, directing, and performances.
If we must.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Saint Gremlinoid. That's a monster. Gremlin's a type of monster. There you go. If you don't mind me asking, what's it like being an assistant at Universal?
Yeah, totally. So I was an assistant to a development there, and the only bad thing I have to say about Universal is that I didn't get to spend more time there. They are the nicest people. They care so much about the work they do, and like really passionate, awesome, creative executives. My job, I was an executive assistant. Most of the assistant jobs, and I'm happy to answer. So like getting to like the rep stage and stuff has been so important for me, and I think it's super important to like have a sort of road to get there. Like getting your foot in the door is so important in this industry that has higher barriers to entry than any other, I think. And I'm still going through them right now. Like it's crazy. But my job at Universal was I answered phones, I did a lot of spreadsheets, and just sort of essentially made sure that the executive that I was working for could do his job smoothly, which was sort of facilitating sort of like these movies going from pre to like post to like being released. So there was a lot of like connecting people on calls. Most assistant jobs in the industry are just calls, calls, calls. But something really fun on this one too is you sort of get a look into like projects and the slate that they have going on too. So it was sort of my job from day to day to go through the dailies of Violent Night, which they released a little bit ago, which was the David Harbour Santa Claus action movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you really get to see behind the scenes of like just how the industry works on set and off set. And they're all awesome people there. Because of the way Comcast is set up, they only hire people on actor basis, which is why I could only do a year there, essentially. But they're awesome people, and it was really good work too.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Here's a question. Is an MFA necessary to be successful in the field, and does one need to move to LA?
The MFA is not necessary. It is a good boost, I think, and I learned a ton from mine. I think there's a few schools that are probably really worth the MFA. I think like I'll toot my own horn a bit. Like USC, I think they have a very good MFA program. AFI has a very good MFA writing program. And I think a big part of all those are you're gonna have great professors wherever you go that are gonna teach you a lot about writing. But it's really also all about the network that you're making there and how you can lean people and how they'll be able to lean on you too. And USC has a lot of like sort of working industry folks as their professors and as their staff and everyone there. So I felt very supported in sort of starting my journey. Like I was able to get some of my first jobs out of USC because the people working there were also USC grads, essentially. Yes. So is an MFA crucial? No. Does it help? Yes. I do think being in LA is a huge help for being in the industry. Just if someone wants to get a coffee or something, you're able to. I know Zoom is great now, but being available is important. Massachusetts, and I was just getting turned on because they said you're not here. Like I can't hire you and then assume you're gonna be able to move out here in 3-4 months, whatever. So it does help, definitely. Yeah.
It does, yes. I would agree. And I would add just my own answer to that. I moved here right after college. You don't have to do that. You can spend a couple years building up your skills and your portfolio. So like it's important to be there eventually, but you don't need to rush there. And I would say, especially right now, because the cost of everything is so incredibly high. Build up your skills, build up your network before, or you can take the time to build up your network before you make the move. But it is probably the right move to eventually make when you are prepared.
When you're stable enough to, I would definitely agree.
Right. More questions. Alex asks, curious why you chose a female protagonist for the movie, for Lure.
I think that's a good question, and I'll try to keep this as little TMI as I can, but someone close to me a few years ago lost their daughter, and it was or let me rephrase that, lost their brother, and being sort of like around that family and seeing the most intense visceral reaction to it. And I think that's probably where I latched onto the most. I think mother losing daughter is a very powerful relationship, and I think that's why the main character was female.
Okay, thanks for that. Here's a question. I think this might just be a follow-up from before. Maybe you can, because we already kind of broached the topic. Maybe we can just quickly answer this one. How did you get the job at Universal, I guess is the question?
Yeah, so this job was not like listed or anything. There's a lot of really good job sites out there. Some of them are subscription-based, some are not. So the Tracking Board is a good one. They have a lot of stuff on there. Same with, there's a bunch of Discord servers out there too that have a lot of information. Job post. Hollylist is a good one too. This one was not posted. It was given to me by a mutual friend who was also a USC alum. And from there, that's how I sort of got the interview.
Gotcha. Okay. So not applying to a random listing, but through networking.
Correct.
That is how. That is the usually considered the safer way, or the way to get these.
Right.
Cold applications will not usually work as well. They can.
Again, it's a tough barrier to entry because like I still haven't like do lots of cold like applications and stuff, and I'm not getting hits because I don't know someone there, you know. So
right.
You can be super qualified and just not know the right person.
Exactly. Here's a question. Is it possible to be an assistant virtually?
Yeah, totally. I think it depends entirely on the company or the person specifically. A lot of personal assistants would be harder to do so because a lot of personal assistants, like I have friends who are personal assistants, you know, like actors or directors or something, and you have to be like physically in the home. And
yeah,
stuff.
or driving around, like doing stuff in town, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like there are people that I know who work mostly remotely as assistants, and it can happen essentially like, you know, the office phone to forward to you, and then you'll call your boss. And my first couple months at Universal, because it was during the pandemic, were all remote. So it's 100% functional. It's just about if your boss is going to be okay with that.
Right. And I think on TV especially, like during the pandemic, we got very used to doing things virtually, but after 2021, 22, I think a lot of showrunners prefer the room to be meeting in person if they can. And to that end, you probably have to be in the room with them to like get everything. If you're just listening through a mic, you're not going to like get all of the ideas that are thrown around the room in the same way. So yeah. If you're trying for writer's assistant or showrunner's assistant, then I would guess you would have to be here. There would be exceptions to that certainly, but it is helpful to be here.
And I prefer being in person. And like, right. I don't even have a car in LA right now, which is rough. But like,
same.
I take public transit all around, and I actually think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good here.
Yeah, just don't get on the red line after like 10:30, and then you'll be fine.
But that's the thing. I live downtown, and I have to take.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I take it to get to Hollywood all the time too. But
yeah.
It's, you just gotta know. You gotta know the best times and places to go. But anyway, it's possible. You don't need a car necessarily. It helps to have one. Let's take more questions. Is this question for me or for Nick? I think this is for Nick. Has your script been picked up by Netflix?
No.
Yeah, you may not be able to comment exactly on the attachments.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff happening with it all day, and once I get something that is, you know, shareable, it will be shared because believe me, I'm itching to share stuff. But no, it has not been picked up by Netflix.
Yeah, I wonder why they asked about Netflix specifically. Okay.
Netflix is just those are the guys, those are the big boys.
They sure are. Okay, here's a couple more questions. Luke asks, can you provide any tips for applying non-standard formatting, font change, word placement without being distracting? You do a bit of this in the script, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important to use it, I think, sparingly, and if it is important to be used. So I wouldn't just do it to like have a different font in there just to make, you know, the person reading it wake up. But if it's conveying a certain something, like, you know, I think in lore I have it be like something is falling, so I kind of have it go like down, 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 like really quick. Mm-hmm. If it guides the eye down the page in a way that's gonna help the story, like totally go for it. Like in the next one I'm writing, it's about a lot of sounds. And so the sound, how each sound sort of feels will make the text be bigger or smaller on the page, or like bolded or no. I like breaking the rules, like when it's very clear that I'm meaning to, and sparingly, I think.
Right. This is something I'm always talking to students about who are like, what if I did a different thing on every page? It's like, but you're not making an art project. You're not making a Shel Silverstein poem. Ultimately, the more you emphasize, like doing something different is a form of emphasis, and the more emphasis there is, the less it emphasizes. So I think for a specific effect and impact, and what did you do? Like when the miners were writing on the walls, I think you swapped font to give that kind of like creepy, bloody kind of like text vibe to it, and things like that. But you don't do it all throughout the movie. It's just in one part.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's flavor, like a little bit of flavor. You know, formatting should be like a little bit of like salt and pepper, or like cayenne, a little bit of something there, like to make it spicy.
Right. Somebody's saying the sun from my camera is blocking your face. Hang on. I think it's... There we go. I fixed it. I fixed the glare. Okay, let's... we have a few more questions. Luke says, is there any particular reason you chose to bold fade in? You mean at the beginning of the... Which fade in do you mean? At the start?
Yeah, I like bolding all my transitions and sort of stuff that isn't just like the meat of it. So like action lines and stuff. I like to keep things like clearly like we're moving. So like all my slug lines I like to bold and have like double indented or whatever it is, because I like things to feel not segmented, but like it feels like we're moving a blob of text basically.
Yeah, I love bold slug lines. I only ever write them now, and it does totally clearly delineate like when one scene begins and the other, or not the scene necessarily, but when we are moving locations. And it can just help with a sense of progress down the page. It feels like we are making clearer progress down the page if you're reading essentially like not exactly like a tweet or whatever, but like just a couple paragraphs underneath a slug line, and then it just feels like a stronger transition somehow. I don't know. There's not a great reason why, I guess, logically, but somehow it feels better.
I've been like a reader for a couple different companies. A big thing I forgot to mention at Universal as well, I was doing like a script a day of coverage, like reading, and then like write that up the chain whether I liked it or not. And always, if I had the pile was always massive, and the thing for me that would help differentiate that kind of, if I saw one that was like 135 pages and was like very thick and like I didn't see any bold or anything in it, I would take a deep breath and be like, okay, get ready for this. But then if sitting right next to that one is 93 pages and like it's crisp, it's clean, and it looks like it's going to move me along, I know which one I'm taking off the pile next. And I think that's important too, is just keeping sort of like readability in mind. And I think it ups readability.
Yeah, and like the psychological experience of getting somebody to choose your script to pick up and read is actually something you have a little bit of control over. We don't really think of we think of like, well, they're either going to read it or they're not. But like, if you can make it feel like it will be nicer, even within the first couple pages, like that, if you have 20 scripts to choose from, then they're going to pick the one that's going to feel the most painless, and like they're in good hands of somebody who actually adequately knows what it is like to read a script and knows how to make it as easy as possible. I guess you use a lot of white space and a lot of kind of like one line, this sort of thing to make the eye sort of glide down the page, I guess. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, because I knew that's what I liked. Like when I read something and it was like that, I responded a little better to typically. And that's the same thing goes for like a log line. A good log line is important. It's not the end all be all, because what really does matter is the script. But like we all saw on the Blacklist, like there was one that says like a couple goes on vacation, there is a pool.
I know the exact one you're talking about. Yeah,
it was the number one talked about script. I think it was called Roses, and it's a good script, and I read it. But like that log line was delivered in confidence. The writer knew that's going to make people talk about this thing and want to read it, and they did, and it promised on its premise. There was a pool and stuff happened in the pool. So yeah.
Here's a question about networking. What are some ways particularly industry newbies network once they are there? Do you have any recommended methods?
There are lots of like drinks and meetups and stuff like that can happen all over town. All Seasons Brewing, if you go there, there's just likely going to be a mixer there at some point. But probably one of the better ways to do it. It's sort of like how we're doing it here. Discord server where a lot of writers can connect, and you can meet up here and have drinks like over audio chat, or you can all decide if you're in LA, let's go. There's other Discord servers too as well. I'm not gonna people from you to other Discord servers, but like it's just getting out there as much as you can, you know, on Twitter too. Like if you see someone has writer in their Discord bio or something, definitely just like you can follow them, see if they'll follow you back. Networking is like it's very key. So.
I would say also if you're in comedy, improv, stand-up, and podcasts, so like live podcasts and things like that, you meet the other fans who are in the audience who are probably other creatives who are into the same sort of stuff as you. And I guess that's not just for comedy, but comedy especially has a lot more opportunities in that kind of space.
Totally, I can imagine. I'm not a funny guy, so I think Lee Winnell made this joke, like comics are the ones you got to watch out for. The people writing the bloody horror, creepy shit, like that's all out on the page, and they're happy as they can be. But, like,
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're keeping it all in.
The comics are the ones with the deep darkness that is of an entirely different type.
Exactly.
Here's a question. Do you ever switch up genres, or is it better to hone your craft in one specific area? That question is from Kim.
For me, I think having a brand is like important. So if someone read Lure and they get my next thing, they're probably anticipating another sort of scary thing in some way or another. So if I came at them with a broad family comedy, that'd probably be a little odd. But like having the brand lets you sort of get into that, like that network in particular. And I think that's probably important. Obviously you can, and if you have different ideas and tones you want to explore, do it. But for me, I feel like horror is always going to kind of be the base, and maybe I'll try to branch out to thriller, sci-fi, like action and stuff. But it's all going to sort of probably lean in that sort of horror space.
Yeah, that's the nice thing is that it's like an umbrella. Like there's several broader umbrellas. There's like horror, thriller, action, sci-fi is sort of one umbrella, and then you might have musical, romance, comedy in a different sort of bucket, and then you have like war, spy, and political thriller in a different bucket. So it's like I feel that once you have, I'm just answering the question, I guess, to some extent. Or this is my take. My take on it is that when you're building up your portfolio, I think is a great time to experiment. And then once you get signed, is a time to find your umbrella and then like sort of focus on things that fall underneath that one kind of category. What is your thought?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's all about, like I said, sort of branding, but I like the idea of the umbrella too. It's sort of like if you pick your starting point in your umbrella, you can like branch off to a certain like area in that. But I do think sort of the person who like is repping you probably likes you for that thing that they like repped you off of, and they want you to explore that further, essentially. Right. And that's probably where a lot of their connections are going to be formed as well. So they're going to want you to be able to really dig in, essentially.
Yeah, and to that end, I find you almost have to kind of like, I don't want to say fight with your reps if you want to do something drastically different, but there is this sort of element of, with screenwriters and their reps, it is a little different than novelists and their reps, because with screenwriters, it feels like a little bit more of an adversarial relationship sometimes, where you have like, no, this is what I want to write next, and they're like, no, you should write this next, and you have to kind of like, I don't know if you've had the same experience, but like, it's a negotiation that you really have to be on the same page before you can start moving forward, or else the whole thing falls apart.
Oh, that's interesting. So I was repped, last year. We're sort of coming up on the year anniversary of it, actually, and it's really all been like we feel very aligned, sort of with where we're going, and it's really an awesome guy, and I feel like super like blessed to like have had him found me. It's kind of a funny like story of how he found me. I'll dig into that in a sec, but
sure.
We've felt pretty aligned, and I think that's probably what makes us a good sort of like partnership, I guess. But he found me because I used the Blacklist site, like their ranking site, not the list, to see if I could get like the 8 or whatever it is, and I got an 8 on the Blacklist, and I sort of posted to Reddit, and I said, hey, I'm excited, here's the review they gave. And Reddit banned me for a week because they thought I was a bot, because so many people requested it that I was just copying and pasting the Google Drive link out to everybody. And he must have been one of the people that I copy and pasted the Google Drive link to before I got banned for a week. And then he reached out afterwards. So
Gotcha.
I got found off of Reddit.
So you made a post for it that said like, "Hey, it's on blacklist. Check out my script. Just anyone who wants it."
Exactly, yeah. And I think you can't be precious about your stuff. I think you have to get there. And I think you have to, because you have to be able to take feedback and improve on that. But you just need eyeballs on your stuff. Like that's so helpful. And keeping stuff close to the chest isn't going to help that. I've put out every stinker that I've written out there in the world and improved on it. Like all the feedback that I've gotten, and Laura was finally felt like it hit.
Right. Here we have a couple minutes left, so we'll wrap up with the last few questions. Here's a question from Luke. Any recs for horror scripts with unique prose or pages that you found well constructed? So yeah, any recommendations for horror scripts?
Yeah, what was it? It was called The French Quarter Will Not Be Spared. I read it when I was at Universal, I think. It might have been somewhere else that I read it, but it was essentially like vampires in New Orleans during Katrina. And it was super fast, super creative, super like stylistic, and I just really enjoyed it. So if that thing's out there, find it. Really good. I haven't read any like produced horror scripts in a little while, so I would defer to you if you have any recommendations there.
Produced ones? I'm not sure about... I usually don't read produced scripts, but I read a lot of blacklist type stuff. I really like... I mean, Colin Bannon is kind of on top of the blacklist nowadays, but he's really good. He's really good,
year,
though.
yeah.
So I really like The Interventionist by him. And what's it called? First Ascent was the other one. So big fan of those lately. But Colin Bannon and Brian Duffield are like pretty kind of like big in the spec kind of world, and they write a lot of horror. So I would check them both out for sure. So you have 5 minutes left. So here's a question: how did you get on the blacklist?
It's going to be hard to get on the blacklist without a rep campaigning for you. Essentially, I called my rep and I said, I think it'd be really cool if we could get this on the blacklist. And he said, I can do that, or I can try to do that. And essentially, he's going to reach out to people in their network, and they're going to say, hey, read this if you want to. If you like it, give it a vote on the blacklist, essentially. So I don't know how one becomes a blacklist voter, but it's about, a network of people who you trust that are blacklist voters, that obviously they're not going to just throw you a vote. They have to like your thing. But it's about, again, networks and connections.
We lost our meeting somehow.
I can still, did we hit the hour on it?
Is there an hour limit? I didn't realize. I can still hear you fine. I think we're still recording, so we may not. Not sure, are you there?
I might just have to rejoin it, or like...
Yeah, give me a sec. I'm not sure why, because we should have a longer period, but it just cut off. Give me 1 sec.
Okay, that's cool. We're still, I think our stream is still going, and we're still, the recording is still going.
I can still hear and see you. I think it's joining another meeting in a second.
Okay, but let me, did we wrap up that last question? Oh, yeah, so basically your reps do it, is the answer. We don't really, we're not doing the campaigning ourselves, thank God. But it is a campaigning. Go ahead.
Yeah, and there were some on the blacklist this year that did not have reps. I'm like, how the hell did you do that?
I truly don't know. I mean, I've had reps before, and I still, even with them trying, I still didn't get on the list. So it's like, even you're not guaranteed to get it, even if you have a team. It's like such a it's a largely invisible process that is like, we don't really get access to all the information of how it works. Yeah, you basically have to have a rep unless you're those people. In which case, I guess ask them how they did it, because I truly couldn't tell you.
Yeah, and I mean, a big part of it is like, there's luck to it, but I really appreciate my rep and he pushed for it and campaigned for it and stuff. So yeah, super helpful to have someone like that in your corner.
I think that I have restarted the meeting. Are we back? We're back.
Back.
There you are.
Double talking in the
you hear double talking? Okay, let me mute myself on the meet.
All right.
This is always such a complex arrangement of different screens and programs. Do you still hear it, or does it sound okay?
No, I hear you good.
It sounds fine? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So looks like we have time for one more question. How do you get a rep? Do you need a lawyer first?
This is a big barrier to entry thing. Everyone's thing is going to be different. Like I said, I got a good score on a review site, and was found on. There's a lot of steps to it, but essentially, what I think the best sort of tips I can offer for getting rep are you're gonna just bolster your network, like really reach out to other people, get to know. Cold querying is a brutal process, but it does get results sometimes, and essentially that means you're to managers who accept unsolicited material, essentially, and are going to read your stuff and decide if they want to rep you based off. And so for that kind of thing, you'd want to have some sort of IMDb Pro or like Studio System account. And if there's a project out there that you like, something that or style, you'd go on that projects page, find the writer or the director on it, see if they have reps listed, see if those reps have provided their contact information, and then reach out with a query letter that basically says, hey, here's my thing. If you want to check it out, let me know. Definitely don't attach the PDF. Don't attach the PDF in there because they will throw that out instantly. You're basically just saying, hi, I'm Nick. I write spooky shit. Here's the log line. Bye. And that's it. And you're going to send 100 of those, and you're going to get one person back who says, okay. But that happens. It does happen. And my sort of philosophy is if you can't keep good material down forever, so if you keep working at your craft and keep putting it out there, eventually something's got to hit.
Great advice. And I guess I would just add one of the best ways to also get a query read or through is to include accolades or anything that you've got alongside. I mean, you had an 8 on Blacklist. If you placed in top 10 of something, at least probably semifinals of most major contests, or if you have it set up somewhere, or you have an attachment, or anything at all that you can just say, this isn't just like, I'm not just some random person off the street with a script, but this has been vetted somehow. This has something, some kind of like proving that this is worth your time. If you just even include 8s on Blacklist in the subject line, I think it's about 100 times more likely to be read.
Yeah, that'll be helpful. And again, like getting an 8 on the Blacklist is a crapshoot in its own like sense. Like someone could love your script, and another reader there could have just not vibed with it. It's not a final say on if you're a good.
Yeah, not an exact science by far.
Plenty of 5s on the Blacklist. So.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple as well, and on the same script, I got a 4 on the script that got me signed. So with no changes, so I don't know what to even make of that. Let's take this last question, then we'll move into lab. Last question is a simple one. Which contest do you recommend?
I have like a big 5. Nichols, Humanitas, Page, Austin. I feel like I might be missing one. But sort of like that's my worth sending into. Screenwriting. I like Screen. Or not Screen. What is it? Is it not Screenwriting? What am I thinking of? Screencraft.
Craft, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll add Launchpad just because I got signed off Launchpad, so I feel like I almost have to plug them.
Awesome, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And what's the other one? Cinestory I've heard really good things about, but I have not actually ever placed in it in the past, but I've had it recommended personally.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's like 5 or 6 contests. I really wouldn't go much beyond those, to be honest. Like the smaller ones, you'll see like Beverly Hills Film Festival or whatever, or like, New Mexico Screenwriting Association or something like that. And even if you win those, you won't get... I know people that have won first place in some smaller screenwriting contests, and they either get ghosted, or they get almost no prize, or they get like just it's useless. So beyond the ones we just listed, I know it sounds a little silly to say those are the only good ones, but I wouldn't dig too deep.
Yeah, I think it's about seeing too, like, are reps reading like at the final stage, producers, that kind of thing can be helpful as well.
Right. And if you do check the list of judges and then you place in the contest, they're not always going to reach out to you if you place. You have to reach out to them. So I would recommend, this is how I did it myself, look at who the judges are, because they clearly care about that contest if they are a judge in that contest. And then if you place in the top 10, email every single one of them and ask if they'll read another script from you. That's my personal tip. Okay, and South by Southwest, any thought on that?
That always felt like that was finished movies. Like
maybe I
South
don't
by
know much about
Southwest, yeah, Sundance, TIFF, like Tribeca. Those all feel like, I don't know, script competitions, but those always felt like that was like finished movies, like big stuff from here's there and stuff.
Right, for sure. I think Sundance Labs is the
yeah, all those will have a
so
lab.
those will be good.
They're sort of like different than a contest, but they could be helpful.
Right. Thank you for that. So I guess that'll wrap up our QA for now. We can move into the sort of lab session. Maybe people will have some questions about their horror projects or stuff they're working on. Maybe they'll share a log line or something. We could give some feedback. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
I'm just plugging.
All right. So this doesn't. You don't have to have like a perfect, amazing pitch ready to go for it today. We did kind of introduce that element a little bit late. But we're going to now move from the QA into lab, where you can share your brainstorming or questions you might have about projects that you yourself are working on, but probably going to want to stick in the horror, sci-fi, thriller kind of space for today, just because that is Nick's area of expertise. And so you can share log lines. You can share a 1 minute. If you do a pitch, try to wrap it up within 1 to 2 minutes. Like, don't go on and on and on. We will cut you off eventually, but also just discussion, feedback, anything else you guys would like to ask about or work on. But since we're in a stage channel, they will have to use the text chat to let us know that they have something they want to share. So again, mouse over Classroom and find that white word bubble that says Open Chat if you'd like to tell us that you'd like to speak, and then we can even invite you up to the stage to ask your question out loud. So make sure your microphone is plugged in and working and everything else. I think we have a log line from Michelle to begin with. A movie called The Bone Cleaner. We'll invite her to the stage. Hi, Michelle. Can you hear us okay?
Hi. Yes, I'm sorry. I was off. Hi, nice to meet you, Nick. Thank you, Connor.
Michelle.
Hey, Michelle. Why don't we start by just read out what you got for us, and then you can tell us what kind of help you're looking for.
Okay, so it's called The Bone Cleaner, genre horror. Logline: when a detective investigating a series of missing persons closes in on a serial killer cannibal, the serial killer abducts his daughter, and he must rescue her before the serial killer kills the girl and eats her. Comps: Dexter, 7, Hannibal. Format feature. Feedback, please.
Okay, you want to start us off, Nick?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
What more should I say?
Oh no, you're good. I was asking if Nick wants to start off with the feedback.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
No, I was just wondering, what kind of thoughts are you looking on for? Are you looking on like logline thoughts or like general beats? Where do you think it needs like feedback?
Well, okay. So, what I've been told in class is that, why does the serial killer kidnap the daughter of the detective? And my response is that, well, she does this as sort of a desperate plea to be able to get to end the investigation, but I think she knows she won't get away with this. But I also felt like I've got to have some sort of like power struggle, some sort of obstacle for the serial killer to bring her to to be arrested.
Cool.
Nick, are you able to see the text chat as well, Nick? I can tag you in the.
Yeah, I've been.
Okay, good.
Yes. Oh, don't worry. I've been reading every single message.
Oh, okay.
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 I guess that's just it. And I mean, from your expertise, what do you think of that kind of story in the log line?
Yeah, I think it's a very cool idea that has promise. I think the question I'm wondering right now from your logline, is this like a two-parter? Are you following just the detective, or is this sort of like goes to detective, goes to serial killer, and back and...
I'm thinking back and forth. I've only written the outline, and it goes back and forth. And something I haven't included in here is that the serial killer seeks out the detective, and they begin sleeping with each other, and then he discovers that she has to be the serial killer.
So that's a big twist that might merit being in your log line. And then that can even be the reason why this person is close enough to this person's daughter to be able to take them from them, So
okay, I wasn't sure how to put it in there.
Yeah, I think something like, a detective begins a relationship and doesn't realize that it's with the person that they're hunting. I think that is something that has been done, but I'm not sure it's been done with cannibals and kidnapping a child. So I'd definitely play on that. That's an interesting aspect of that story.
It could even maybe start. The logline might even start with something like, when he discovers that the woman he's dating is the serial killer he's been pursuing. If he's kind of framed, I mean, that does sort of suggest that'll happen pretty early in the story, that he'll, and I don't exactly know how late you wanted that reveal to happen. Normally, if we start with the first clause is usually going to tell us basically the inciting incident, so that may not exactly work for you, but that just helps organize the events in my mind. If when he discovers that the woman he's dating is the serial killer he's been pursuing, that's when she kidnaps his kid to get him to give up the case. Is that right?
Yeah, and well, but one of the things I'm showing is that he's a flawed person. It's a flawed hero because he's married, and but he's he's sleeping with other women, and so anyway, I wanted him to be a flawed hero, not a white knight hero.
Sure.
Totally, yeah. And I think when it comes down to like the log line and a quick pitch, I think whatever audience you're pitching is gonna assume that your character is flawed. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's a cool other layer that you've just put in there now, is that he's not just like dating around. This is someone that he's sneaking around with. So having to like go to his wife then and be like, hey, this person like kidnapped our kid. Who was it? Oh, just this woman that I
don't know, this random lady, I guess. This crazy serial killer out of nowhere.
That's another layer. Like almost framing this as like love triangle with a serial cannibal is like a fun way into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can play with that totally. So I would amp up, like these twists that you have in the script that are still going to be twists. Having them in some, like, not foreboding them, like showing them, hinting at them in the logline is going to be helpful, I think. So like, bring that out because that's two cool bits there that you left out of.
Yeah,
Thank you.
To me, that's what helps separate it from just any other detective investigating serial killer movie, because there's a lot of those. If the hook is the relationship dynamic, then we want to know about the relationship dynamic in the logline.
Well, maybe afterwards, maybe you can help me rephrase it, Connor.
Sure, yeah. Feel free to post in the Loglines with Connor channel anytime, and I can take a look.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's very nice to meet you, Nick. Thank you for helping us.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you for.
All right. It's not too hard, right? It's kind of like a call-in show, like those what's on the radio, where you call in, you're like, my car's making a funny sound.
It's not. I don't think it's HD enough to show that I'm sweating bullets.
Oh man. Well, maybe for next time we'll upgrade the. We'll stream at a higher quality. We have one called Root Canal. Let's hear about this one.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Hello.
Hey.
How are you?
So, I'm in streaming mode, so it's not showing your whole username. Maybe you can introduce yourself, tell us your name before you tell us about your movie.
Username is Sublimated Serpent. So, the screenplay is basically, do you guys know what Dead Space System Shock is?
Yeah, I'm a big gamer. I'm a big gamer, so I love Dead Space.
Yeah.
Okay, respect. The remake slaps. It's so good. Okay. So if you've ever heard of this thing called Mystery Flesh Pit National Park, this is kind of like that. Basically, imagine if you know what the flood, like imagine if you had the flood and the necromorphs, and basically imagine if fucking like BP started using them for terraforming or habitat transformation. The catch is they're native to a specific alien planet. So you have a multi-species conglomerate of guys, governments, private sector guys, all of those, gunning for this planet and trying to mod these creatures, ship them out. eventually corporate negligence and bureaucracy goes awry, and shit happens. And the entire story is about that shit happening. So it's very much that sort of alien horror mixed with corporate malfeasance and bureaucracy. That's the big draw.
Nice. That's definitely a genre of story I can get behind. What kind of feedback are you looking for?
I guess conceptual. I guess like because you can't get super granular, so I guess it would have to be like big picture conceptual stuff.
Yeah. My thoughts are definitely amp up like as concisely as you can sort of the rules of those things in the logline and the pitch, since it does require a bit of like there's a lot of great lore sort of in this sci-fi world that you have. So what I'm first seeing is when habit-changing organisms begin to when habitat-changing organisms. Yeah, so I would add in like that they're being controlled. What's their motivation, I guess. But I think just being able to hone in on the stakes real quick here is gonna help that with the lore. That was sort of word soupy, but just being able to concisely explain deep lore is going to be important for your logline and your pitch, I think.
Yeah.
Which sounds strong.
On that note of stakes, I kind of had this question. You say he's an Earther contractor. He's trying to stop them from destroying the planet. But what planet do you mean? Earth?
Oh, no, the one they're occupying.
Oh.
That should have been explained.
Okay, so they're on a different, faraway planet from Earth.
It's a reverse alien invasion, basically. That's one of the core parts.
Okay, a human invasion, then, in that case.
Yeah.
Or a British invasion, perhaps, if they are indeed English. Regardless of that, so I guess I was just left with this question of, first of all, the stakes depend on which planet we're actually defending, or that is in danger. So I think if you maybe rephrase this a little bit so that we understand that we are on a foreign planet, so like in an attempt to terraform a foreign colony, a corporation unleashes a shape-shifting, not shape-shifting, but like however you would refer to this, like a quickly mutating viral bacteria or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And then we would understand, okay, this colony will be wiped out. It's not Earth that's going to be wiped out. Or you might kind of imply, once it destroys this planet, it'll move on to the next planet, and then what is it? The whole galaxy that's in danger, or anything like that. So, just in terms of this, defining the stakes, make sure we know where we are and what the danger is. And then, I guess beyond that, my question would be, so, like, Nick, did you get a good sense of, like, who the main character is, or, like, why he's the right person for the story? I mean, all we kind of get are an Earth contractor and his team, but we aren't really building out that same sense of, that sense of why him, right?
Yeah, I think definitely the contractor feels like it's going to come into play. That's why you brought it up in there. But I think you could definitely amp up the main character, like in the short of this too. Absolutely, I'd say. So give us, in the like, if you have a 2-minute pitch for this, set up the world. So like, this is a world where the flood from Covenant to terraform planets by a shady Weyland-Yutani corporate conglomerate. But what happens when those things break free? And now that's where our main character, Jeff, comes in. Or hopefully he has a cooler name than Jeff. It's some space Jeff type thing.
Well, he's just called Moose. Yeah, he's called Moose, which is short for another name.
Moose is good.
So, yeah.
But yeah, and then explain, like, Moose, that's when Moose has to come in and clean up, and that's when all hell breaks loose, essentially.
Or if it's like, I guess, I was also wondering, like, is Moose part of the team that is spreading this organism? In which case, that would be one way into the story. It's saying, like, he shares some responsibility or culpability and he needs to fix his own mistake kind of thing. That would be one sort of arc you could set up. Or you could set it up in a different way, too, right? Where maybe he's like, your main character is like an anti-terraforming activist or something like that, in which case this represents, like, the evolution of that struggle. So I think I would just try to tie the main character into the story a little bit more. We know, like, specifically what is connecting him personally to what's going on, if there is something.
Makes sense. Got to make everything more cohesive. Make sure to take as much of the lore and as much of the stakes as possible, infuse that into the pitch, and make sure that people really understand who the character is, and make it resonate as succinctly as possible.
Yes, it's tricky.
Yeah, I would say make sure the world is set up like as kind of quickly as you can, and then and here's sort of the specifics of that world with this character, and here's the story in that.
All right. Any other thoughts or questions that you had for us?
I guess I would say maybe like what would you like? How would you go about? I guess thinking about character. This is kind of vague, but character dynamics. Like one of the plot points is like the dude's failing relationship because he's an intense workaholic, and like how to balance that with the rest of the story. That's I guess what I'm struggling with a little bit.
So do you mean in just the logline itself, or in writing the project?
I guess in writing.
In writing it. Okay, so not we're moving a little bit beyond just the logline into the character details. Is that right?
Yeah, a little
Yes.
bit. Yeah.
Okay. Nick, any thoughts on that?
It's a good question. I think everything about your character should inform each sort of thing they do. So why is he upset? What exactly is his work? And then how does that thematically impact what's going on with his family? So is he climbing up the ladder at work and that's making stuff at home worse? It's just making sure the connective tissue is there. I'd probably have to know a little bit more about it specifically, but yeah, I mean, it feels like you have your head in the right space for all those things.
Okay.
I would pick a central relationship for the most part, just because I know it's a TV show and it works a little differently than in movies, but there are still central relationships in shows. And so maybe pick who's the most important person to this character, whether that is his wife, a mentor, a best friend, something like that. And if you kind of start with that if you're wondering how to flesh out a character, make them feel more well-rounded and feel like they have existing, interesting, important relationships in the world, I would pick who's the most important person to them. And that is almost always going to be a good starting place, because you don't have that many scenes to show. We're not spending that long with your character, especially in a pilot. That's only half an hour or a full hour, which is like 12 to 15 scenes for half hour, and like maybe 30 scenes for a full hour. So we don't have a ton of time to build out their entire web of relationships, but you got to kind of pick the most important ones to them.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Hope that helps. Thank you so much for sharing this.
No problem.
All right. Looks like we have at least two more. Let's hear from JT. Body counts.
What up?
Hey,
I'm
JT.
here. Yeah, so body count, if I were to pitch it, basic premise is, if this was a short story, the first line would be Joshua successfully matched with 36 women over the past 6 months, and of those, 33 are dead. The idea is sort of F-boy, has been going through women. The last one he found, he reconnected with his high school girlfriend who he loved back then. He reconnected with her, and it's great, and he actually wants a real connection, real relationship, but he discovers that one after another, all these previous women are dying, and so he's got to figure out what exactly is killing them before the line reaches the person he really quite cares about. Logline is rough. It's fine. It's whatever. My big question, the big thing I'm struggling with, I've done a treatment of this, I'm working through it, is trying to think through what my horror set pieces are and make sure that they're differentiated. Like, we've seen a lot of movies with a spooky, scary guy is coming after someone, So I just wanted to pick your brain about, like, what goes into when you're writing your horror set pieces, when you're designing your horror sequences. What's your approach, and what sort of things are you focused on? Like the different angles you're coming at it from.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it's important to make sure theme is sort of the stuff you're doing. So Body Count, which is a good title for this, by the way, it's very funny, is about, dating and online apps and stuff. And to avoid just sort of guy wandering, his house that is haunted or whatnot, are these things happening on dates? Like, are hauntings happening on dates? Are people dying on dates? Are there crazy dates that are happening, hiking dates, or people falling, bungee jumping dates? Like, that's what I would amp up there. Like, the thing that I'm doing now takes place in like a freezer, and so a lot of the stuff is involved has to do with like dying by freezing to death. What happens when you build a fire in the freezer? It's like all about like the levels of cold that there is. So playing up, how can the theme of this thing relate to the set pieces, I guess?
Can I ask a quick clarifying question? Because I just want to make sure that we're getting it. So are you saying that he discovers that all of his former dates have died? He's not actually watching them or experiencing those deaths himself?
Yes, yeah. So he discovers that, like, basically everyone's dead one after another in, like, weird, perhaps murdery ways, except for 3, right? So there's the 2 women before his fiancé and his fiancé.
Oh, okay.
And so the action of the movie is him trying to research on himself, discover what's going on, and then also try to go to those 2 women before his current woman to see if they know anything, if they've seen anything.
The Final Destination kind of, like,
yeah.
You've seen the Final Destination movies, I assume, right?
No, I've never seen a Final Destination movie, actually. It's a hole in my horror watching.
Okay. I'd recommend checking out at least the first one, just because it's kind of brilliant, except for a couple weird missteps, but like it's a really clever premise, and the way that the movies keep the characters active and motivated it's just, they're well plotted for the most part. At least some of them are. I'm kind of I don't quite understand what's scary about this movie if we don't even know what the threat is. What is the threat? Can you spoil it for us and tell us what's actually happening here? I can't even imagine what a horror sequence would be in this movie.
That's fair. So the core of it is the big reveal at the end is that it's sort of It Follows-y sort of supernatural STD he's got. So he's the carrier, and he's killed all these women.
And he had sex with every single one of his dates?
Yeah. He's
Okay.
a big F boy. Yeah. Everyone he matched with and had sex with. And so they're sort of like going, part of the effect of like the STD is they're like, dying, going crazy. Some of them kill themselves, some of them die in other ways. They sort of lose touch with reality. And one of the women is not dead, she's missing, presumed dead, and she's revealed to be like basically 5 women ago she figured out that he was the cause, and so she's been stalking him, trying to find out like if she poisoned him, what she did to him, how she can not die, save herself, right? So that's like this lurking figure that's breaking into his car, that's like in his house in the middle of the night, that's making scary noises.
That's red herring, yeah.
Yes, and then at the end, she shows up. She's the monster. She's the bad guy. And then the final twist is that she's a victim, and that it's too late for his fiance.
I almost feel like this isn't even a horror movie. You know what I mean? Just because the main character is not even in danger.
That's fair. Yeah.
Nick, what do you think? This is a weird. I mean, I love the idea. It just sounds like a mystery to me, not a horror.
It's a unique idea. You might even want to flip it and turn it into a freaky or a happy death day to you type thing, where it's like this could fit very snugly in the comp sort of genre, and that might solve sort of like your set piece dilemma, where if you're worried that the thing isn't going to be scary enough, like those aren't necessarily scary to get the job done in that sense. So that could be something to play with. Or think
comedy.
about.
Yeah, it's kind of an inherently ridiculous idea, which can work you can play it straight, or you could play it in a funnier way. But I guess I'm just struggling to imagine what would the premise scenes even sort of be if this is mostly going to be him doing research and calling people and interviewing them, or maybe I guess you do have that nice red herring element of like, oh, am I being stalked by a killer? Like that will lead to a little bit, but if you're not even revealing what's actually going on till the end, that makes me feel like we can't actually have any scare sequences until the end, right?
It's fair. Yeah, and I guess this is why I'm struggling with this concept. He discovers like the 3 women are still alive. One, he shows up on her door, finds her brutally murdered. He tries to warn the second one. She, ignores him, and then shows up at his doorstep, and it's like, it's here. The thing is following me, because she's starting to go become disconnected with reality. She's getting more ill and sicker. So there's stuff, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe I gotta sit on it more. This is all helpful.
I wonder. Yeah, I really like the basics. Like it's got an ironic hook to it. It's clever. It could be funny. Maybe you aren't thinking it's funny, but I'm just wondering where the horror is coming from exactly. Like normally to have a horror story, we need a clear threat. We need a main character that is not only afraid but in danger. And if we remove those things, then you have to kind of. And also, once he figures out what's going on, there's almost nothing he can do. Or are you saying there is something he can? Is there some way he can save his fiancée?
No, that's the end of the movie. It's just this dying horror of that she's.
But so some process has been put in place that he eventually will figure out, but has no power to stop.
Yeah.
That it could work, but it feels like there's a couple stumbling blocks in what is otherwise a very smooth and nice premise, which I guess is why I'm spending so many words on it, because I'm like. It's almost. I feel like it's just like I'm missing one step or something, just a little something missing. I don't know. What do you think, Nick?
When we were in It Follows, there's the constant threat that this thing's going to catch up to her. That's the big thing there. And so if all this stuff's just happened, people from his past, that's where the lack of stakes comes from. So there is a good message in here from something in Serpent. Flip it and have it be the protagonist of the girl who's currently dating the guy and realizes she's got a ticking time clock on her now. Playing with that, like, those stakes can help amp up the horror.
Or potentially
that's interesting.
The people who, like, the closer it gets towards them being overtaken by this symbiote or monster, whatever, they start to change and become more dangerous. So that way maybe even his fiancée could become more monstrous and pose more of a threat to him throughout the movie. And as he's trying to save her, she's becoming scarier and, like, starting to actually maybe threaten his life in that way. That's just a off the top of my head suggestion of like something that could potentially, you could do whatever direction you want, but that's just like an idea.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Okay, I see what you guys are saying, and I think this is helping put a point on what I've been struggling with. So, okay. Thank you,
Any other
guys.
thoughts from either JT or Nick?
No, it feels like it's you're right. I feel like it's right on the verge of like sort of clicking. So just finding that little bit there will make it come out.
The title does a lot of heavy lifting here. The title's so good.
Good. I'm glad that at least is working. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, JT. All right, we got half an hour left. We have time for a couple more. We have a quick question from Nacho. Any tips for writing better one sheets? People have been asking about one sheets lately. We have to write so many one sheets, but nobody teaches you how. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I've never really been great at them or like had to present them to people. They're just really to make sure that I'm comprehending my story the best I can. So I just make sure it's nicely. So I have my log line, and then I have like setting, theme, characters, general story beats. I just spell all that out for myself essentially and let it grow from that basically. So I'm probably not going to be too helpful with one sheet.
I can give some more tips just because I've had to do a lot of them, and my manager did not want to go out with my first script, so I had to just like audition one sheets for them basically, which a lot of writers I think nowadays end up having to do, which is not that bad. I mean, it's better than writing whole scripts every time, but it is useful to be able to do this. So I would say in terms of writing better one sheets, get right to the point, be really quick with the first act, like 4 or 5 sentences first act. You want to have like 8 sentences second act, so the second really beefy paragraph is going to be second act, and then wrap up third act with just 3 or 4 sentences. And when you end the third act, make it really clear what the arc or the theme of this story was. It shouldn't just feel like it just ends. It shouldn't feel like, and then they beat the monster. It should be like, and then she grasps the sword that killed her father, and as she sheathes it once more, she becomes the warrior she was always meant to be. Something that's a terrible example, but like that's just how you sort of want to spell out what the arc was, just because so little of that, so little info can come through normally in a one sheet, where you have to be kind of dry and clinical and sort of just like give us raw story information so much that it can lose that sense of how is this person actually changing. And why did I watch this? What was the point of this? So I would say the last sentence is super important in a one sheet. you will just get better at them from doing a lot of them. So maybe when trying to decide what your next script should be, just try writing out a couple one-sheets to begin with and see which one grabs your interest the most. Okay, we have another pitch from, and a quick question. Michelle says, should the one sheet be organized into sections with headings? You don't have to have headings for the different acts on the one sheet. I've seen that on 3 sheets sometimes, but generally no. Just lay it out all in one straight through prose document. Okay, looks like we have 2 more, so we'll have JT and then we'll have Elijah. We have Boy Parts and Echoes of Nirvana. Let's start with Luke, if he's ready.
Hello.
Hey, Luke.
Hello.
I also have a writing partner working on this project with me. I don't know if she wants to come up or not.
Would you like to raise a hand, writing partner? Maybe not. Oh, is this Charlie? This one?
Yep.
Okay.
Bonsoir.
Hello, welcome. Let's hear about it. Boy Parts.
All right. What, you just want me to start the pitch, read the log line?
Yeah,
Where do I start?
maybe start with what you posted here.
All right. Title is Boy Parts, obviously. It's a horror comedy feature. Comps are Together. It's kind of the best boy band movie we could find. And Saw. And the logline thus far is: abducted and forced into a death trap dungeon with his former boy band, a shy pop star must unify his fractured group to survive a superfan's deadly games.
All right, thanks for that. First impressions, Nick?
I think pretty cohesive, quick, flashy logline. I feel like it's pretty gripping and makes sense. Death trapped bumps on me slightly, maybe booby trapped or something like that. Or deadly, something. Just the phrasing "death trapped" feels a little funky. And then a shy pop star feels hard to believe. I feel like
is there a shy pop star? That feels almost impossible.
To be a pop star.
It's a playing with the archetypes. Like when you have a boy band, there's like the shy guy, the sporty one. So we're playing with the labeling like that. Like it's almost satirical with some of the boy band characterizations.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I'm not 100% sure shy is the adjective we're going to land on for
right
in the end.
Yeah,
it might be worth it to hang a lantern on that and say like the band's quintessential quote unquote shy guy now has to step up and be brave or something, or the one who's like the the buff like one that's really full of themselves has to through this horrible game or whatever. But overall I think this logline is pretty concise and makes sense. Concise and makes sense.
Can I just ask, so I guess, picking the word shy there almost makes it feel like, so you only have one, if you only have one adjective to pick, then I would normally pick the one that ties the character into the story and suggests what their arc kind of is, and even the way Nick just phrased it, where you could play it sort of like, the shy guy has to become brave, and I would sort of understand that maybe shy is the opposite of brave in some sense, but right now it almost sounds like you're saying, is the fact that he was shy the thing that caused his band to fracture, or is that like, not actually... Why did his band break up, I guess is the question.
Yeah, so shy wouldn't be, I guess, the correct adjective. He's more like the brooding artist type. And, like, we don't have it explicitly stated, like, right in the beginning when we start the script. But essentially, like, there's fracture in the band. He wants, like, a larger voice, a bigger role. And the band pushes back, so he, like, walks away from the band to reform his own group where he kind of has a more leadership position, and he's forced back into like the wingman position when he's abducted by these super fans and has to work with his former bandmates again to get out of this.
That makes sense. I would put that in then instead of sort of shy, like, and now the leader who broke up the band has to lead them all through these traps together,
Is he the leader?
Not initially. He's not the leader of the original band. He leaves them, becomes the leader of a new band where he has more like artistic control like he wants. But the super fans want him a part of the original boy band, so they kidnap him put them all together and like force them to work together as a team.
I get it.
If the superfan wants the band to group, are they actively killing the members with these games? Because that would seem a little counterintuitive for them, I guess.
Yeah,
So-
we've got that there.
Yeah.
She's a bit crazy. She's a bit Buffalo Bill with trying to make a suit out of women or whatever. She's trying to make
Yeah.
like the dream band, like her dream band, and if they don't live up to her quirky, unique standards, sometimes accidents happen and people die. You know.
She thinks they don't deserve to. They don't belong in the dream
Exactly.
band if they don't pass the tests.
Right,
Pretty
exactly.
I get it. Okay. I think it's pretty solid. I would just look at just in terms of the logline, just that we're looking for like that sense of equal and opposite reaction, right? So if it's like the former leader has to become the leader again, or it might be like the weakest member has to step up to become the leader, or something like
Right.
that. I guess, and so I would just try to tie the way you describe that character in such a way that we understand what his motivation would be or what his need would be in bringing these people back together. Does he have some kind of responsibility to do that, or is this like something that he failed to do before, or something along those lines? Whereas if you just list a personality trait, then that doesn't, if it doesn't seem to correspond to the need or to the character's core motivation, then I think that it doesn't feel 100%. It's like you're at like 97% right now. And I feel like just to push it to 100%, try to just either describe that trait in such a way that makes it clear that that is either what drove them apart in the first place, or that's what gives him that sense of motivation or responsibility in bringing them back together, or something along those lines. I hope I've made sense here.
Yeah, would describing him as like maybe the outcast of the group help when you think about that? Like he's a part of the group, but again, like there's a contention there because, you know, as he matures as an artist, he wants more say, he wants more input, he wants to feel more a part of the direction the band's going on, and they essentially like shut that down, like they they reject his ideas, you know, and so he goes off to do his own thing, but the superfan's like, no, like this is how I want the band, and like kidnaps them and makes them like go through these paces together, and he steps into essentially the like more of the role he wanted to have all along through this
okay.
Ordeal. Yeah,
I could really see it if we understood that as he left, or his radical idea, the new direction he wanted to go in, or whatever, was in an effort to save the band. And then by leaving, it then sort of starts to decline or fall apart, and then we would sort of understand, oh, he wanted to save it, though. He wanted to bring it back to its glory or its pinnacle, or he wanted to sort of elevate the band in some way that he wasn't able to do because they fell apart or they weren't ready for his new ideas or him stepping up into a new sense of independence or something like that. So I think that's a good way to tie it together.
That's a good way to frame it, yeah, but I think it might be important to add that, or to note that sort of all of this happens before the movie starts. Like the movie starts when he's already like broken up with his old band and joined the new band and that's all come to an end and everything. So
that's okay. The backstory backstory in locked room horror movies comes up a lot. So like the fact that it happened before the movie started is totally fine. It doesn't mean that it won't be relevant in the story. Like this genre is all based on like, why are we here? Who's doing this to us? What do we have in common? Like how do we get out of this? Which is usually tied to why they're there in the first place. So anyway, I think that that's not a big problem, that most of that happens before the movie begins.
Yeah.
All right.
What else? Anything else, Nick?
No, I think it's pretty concise. I would just emphasize, instead of like, you know, quote unquote shy, the guy who broke up the band now has to reunify them, essentially.
That would be a great equal and opposite.
That's the secret ingredient, yeah. And he is the guy that broke up the band, so it's perfect.
So I think that's the perfect little twist on that logline.
There you go.
Thank you.
Print it and mint it. All right.
Definitely.
Any other questions, guys?
Nope. I just gotta fix the logline now.
Cool.
So thanks.
Thanks, Luke. Charlie, all good?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. All right, I think we have probably one more. I think maybe two. I think one more. Elijah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Nick and Connor. Thank you guys for doing this. Really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me here. Happy to be here.
If it was up to me, you could come every day of the week. My script echoes Nirvana. The logline is a Hindu man kidnaps people throughout 3 different epochs of his life, believing each of them to be the next reincarnation of a demon that stole his grandmother's soul. But in order to excise the demonic presence, he needs to get them to give up their true name. So it's basically the main structure revolves around 3 different kidnappings. One's when he's a young man in his 20s, the one when he's in his 30s, and one when he's middle-aged in his late 40s. And the first one he kidnaps is a history professor at his college, and there's these little things that, like, these little clues essentially he zones in on, like, well, these are very specific to my grandmother, and so you must be the reincarnation of the soul kind of thing. And then he kidnaps a teenage girl, and then it's his 7-year-old niece is the final one. And it becomes, and by the end of it, you do learn that at the very least, the niece is actually, it's very heavily implied the niece is possessed by the demonic presence, because he's able to successfully excise it. But from everyone else's perspective in the family, he just killed the niece, and so they're all very furious and get revenge and all that kind of stuff. And so what my current issue I'm having with it is that people really like the first section, and people are really liking really like the ending. They really like how it ends. But there's this middle section with this 3rd kidnapping that people are having issues with, and what I've been trying to do with the character's journey is have it be a reaffirmation of him basically. Because the overarching theme is that he's basically always choosing isolation in order to keep doing these kidnappings. He has to keep isolating himself from his family and loved ones. So the idea is he's giving up his own nirvana. He's giving up his own possible, like, you know, heaven on earth, his own possible good life by just being obsessed with this thing. And it's also his father also went to jail for doing the same thing. As like in the very opening scene, you see his father being imprisoned for murder, because his father believed in this thing. He believed he could also find this demon. So he's carrying on this legacy from his father, essentially. And so what I've been trying to do for the second act is have him be this reaffirmation of him, like, choosing to give up his, giving up dating, giving up being social and all this stuff, to refocusing on this obsession of his, essentially, and to show how it's damaging him. But it seems to be it's too much of a repeating beats in his character arc, and so I'm just trying to figure out how to alter the second section so it works better, and it makes, you know, parts that do work still work.
Okay, wow, lot to get into here. Nick, do you want to start, or would you prefer I start?
No, I can jump into. So for the sections of these kidnappings in the actual story, my first brief question is he like hurting the people that he's like interrogating to be the demon or something?
He's torturing them in his basement. He kidnaps them, put them in his basement, and the first doesn't start off torturing them. He starts off just trying to get him to cooperate, basically, like, you might, you know, if we can just, there might be a way to excise this presence without hurting you, the physical person, right? There might be a way to do this. But it gets progressively more radicalized, and it becomes eventually killing each one of them, because what's happening is he wants to do a ritual, essentially, that will excise the demon, and then the demon, knowing it can reincarnate into the next life, it is conscious, and it's playing with the protagonist, making him feel like he is, you know, that he's denying this and trying to gaslight him, essentially. So the demon is always sort of looking for a way to die, essentially, as a last resort, because it does love it, and part of the thing is the demon genuinely loves everyone in this life. It is, and the whole point is, by the end of it, you are rooting for the demon. It has never done anything.
Did you lose audio?
Wrong.
Do you still hear him, Nick?
Yes.
Oh, I lost audio. Give me 1 second. Feel free to keep speaking. We'll fix my headphones.
I can go back. So basically, the idea is that even though and it's implied at the end that the grandma actually gave her soul to the demon, because the demons don't have souls, and by doing this, you're able to give the demon experience love, and it's able to basically stop being a demon. It's able to become a being of its own right. And so the idea is that by the end of it, I want the people to be rooting for the demon. It hasn't done anything wrong. It isn't trying to live its various lives and love the people in its lives, and so Rajiv continually is torturing them and is trying to get them to excise, while the demon, as a last resort, is always willing to die or kill itself because it knows it can reincarnate as a last resort, kind of a thing.
Okay. When it's taking sort of over the people or possessing them, is it like taking away them fully, or is it just sort of like inhabiting their bodies as well?
The basic idea is it's just being reincarnated. Like, it takes over, like, it is reincarnated into a new body. It is just fully aware of itself. It is fully aware that it is a spirit that is being reincarnated. Right.
But does this person, like, say his daughter, when she becomes the demon or the demon becomes her, does his daughter like vanish? Where does the daughter go?
So it's sort of this thing where like the niece in this case would be like it is both the niece, it is like fully the niece, it is fully this girl, it has all, but it also has all of the memories of its past life. You know, imagine if you're reincarnated, you could remember all of your past lives, right?
Yeah.
Like I would think you would still be you, but you would also remember all these other experiences you would have, right? So it's a kind of continuity of person through multiple lives.
Mm-hmm. I think if you're looking to make sure that each sort of like 3 parts of this person's life and journey are, you can keep people like engaged and don't repeat the beats, it's what's unique about each person and what part of this of your main character's like character and arc do they reinforce or explore. So does the first person make them realize that they've been isolated? Does the second person then make them realize how that affects other people? And then does the third person make them realize what they can do to change that? It's because you don't want each person to keep just repeat the same beats over and over.
Right.
Like, I don't know how similar this is to, like, you know, the Christmas ghosts and stuff, like being Scrooge being brought around and stuff. But what new info are we getting about our main character from each sort of person that he's taking that will keep the audience learning and engaging? And then on top of that, well, you already said this bit, so it makes sense that it's tracking like that. Like, the stakes seem to be going up each time. He seems to be getting intense with each sort of kidnapping. So that tracks fine. So it'd be, what are we learning about him? What are we exploring about him with each person? Yes.
Can I ask some questions too?
Yeah.
So, 3 different epochs of his life. What does that mean? These are years apart?
Epochs, yeah. So he kills the first one when this professor's a fully grown adult. So of course he has to be then reborn into a new body and grow up again. And so he doesn't track the second one down until she's like 15ish. Oh. And then the next one, she doesn't track down the final one until she's about 7.
Do you not think that maybe kind of decreases the urgency when so much of the story takes place? Like, horror stories almost never work like this. Horror stories, like, except outside of the world of, like, Stephen King, like It, or things like that, which are 600 pages long and have, like, multi-generational arcs, right? Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Right, so the urgency comes from, because the demon is really the victim, right? So it really comes from, in each situation, the demon is now within, basically their life is at risk, essentially. But you don't know that until, basically to the end, you don't know that all 3 lives are one, really. Like, that's where it kind of all comes together. You don't really know it's a demon till the end. So it's really these 3 different kind of almost short films in that sense, where it's like 3 different victims of the same killer, if that makes sense.
We don't even know it's a demon till the end of the movie?
There's hints and implications, but it's not, I don't think, in my opinion, it doesn't come together fully. It's not like fully revealed until the very end that it's all 3 were actually the demon.
That makes me feel like you might have to completely rethink the logline then, because the logline doesn't, if the logline is full of all the explanation of what's going on, but that's not the experience of watching the movie. The experience of watching the movie might sort of be like a serial killer is going around kidnapping people, right?
But it's from the perspective of the killer in this case, and we are at first on his side, where we're thinking, oh, he thinks this person's a demon, and he's trying to exorcise it, and it's sort of as it goes on, you realize, no, maybe this person is just evil and crazy. So but maybe you're right. Maybe I do need to rework the logline.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
I'm wondering if demon might not be the right term then. Is spirit possibly something to use? Because demon just naturally, like, even saying like a demon who's nothing, like, it bumps a bit. So maybe spirit, that, you know, if you say like the logline can reflect on a guy who's kidnapping people through time, essentially, to you know, exorcist this demon when he comes to realize it's actually just sort of a benign spirit and he's been hurting his loved ones his whole life. Is maybe a shorter version of that logline that flips the whole sort of like exorcism bit on its head and like brings us into that sort of religious realm as well.
Also, is he trying to get his grandmother's soul back, or what is his goal? Is just to get the demon to go back to hell, or what is he actually trying to do?
So within basically the faith of Hinduism, the idea is that the soul, because the soul has been hijacked. So like in Hinduism, these things called rakshasa, which are the closest thing they have to demons, but they can be benevolent and malevolent. So I think spirit is maybe a better word for that. And so the idea, but they don't have souls. They don't go through full form of reincarnation, like people, like other spirits do, other people and living beings do. And so the idea is that he believes, and his father believed, that his grandmother's spirit is no longer able to eventually ascend to nirvana, right? That's the whole point of Hinduism, is you go through different lives until your soul reaches enlightenment and you break free from the circle of samsara, and then your spirit ascends into nirvana, right? And so he believes that the soul is no longer able to do that because it's been hijacked by the demon who's the spirit, I guess, who is now taking these reincarnations instead. And so his idea is if he can purge the presence from the spirit, then the soul will be able to go back to its natural cycle of death and rebirth, and eventually you'll go through. It's like, essentially, imagine if there was a presence, preventing your sister from being able to go to heaven, right? Like, if you're a hardcore Christian and you believe, oh, there's this demonic presence and you'll never be able to go to heaven, so I have to excise that. Imagine that, but over the course of multiple reincarnations.
Okay. That was a little hard to grasp from the logline exactly, like what he was trying to do, like, and where the urgent, like this. I keep coming back to this idea of urgency, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like if her soul is being held and it's being tormented in some way, I could read more urgency from that. Like, we have to get her as soon as possible, right?
And that is his perspective.
That is what he thinks is happening. Okay, but you're saying that's not what's actually happening?
No, what's actually happening is it's just basically she willingly gave over her spirit gave over her soul to the spirit, basically thinking, well, yes, this isn't her thinking, is that because these demons are unable to ever go through reincarnation, they'll never be able to achieve enlightenment, that it's sort of like, well, if I give you my soul and you become human, you're no longer a demon, you're just now going through reincarnation. So that kind of giving self-sacrifice to get rid of one more evil presence in the world, essentially. And so it's just living lives. It is just living lives and getting the human experience it never got and becoming human, essentially. And so
that almost makes me feel like you need. It sort of seems almost like the spirit is the protagonist here, and then
that's by the end of it, the spirit. So like my goal is by the end of it, once you realize that they all were the spirit, that there was the protagonist. It was all actually this one protagonist you're seeing through three lives, and we were actually through the eyes of the killer in this case.
Right. Yeah. So I guess it's a challenging. Well, I guess you've already written it, but it is, I guess, a little challenging to grasp. This is not a traditional horror movie. No. First of all, your main character is the villain, and that is a little unusual, just to go off the bat. It's not that you can't do it. You can do it. But second of all, is he afraid or no?
Who is the protagonist?
Yeah, is the guy is he afraid of the demon, or is he afraid of anything?
At first he is, and then he gets more braver, and then he just becomes more sadistic and more of the killer, and then we're supposed to, and the fear and the horror bits are supposed to be coming from us being like afraid for the people he's kidnapped. Like they're always afraid.
Oh, okay.
Sort of like, I don't know if you saw like Maniac with Elijah Wood or something like that, where that's through the eyes of the killer. So that's sort of a big inspiration.
Right, but in Maniac we never think maybe he's doing the right thing, right? Like,
right. Exactly.
Even in his own mind, I don't like. Yeah. He's kind of just nuts. So I mean that's a significant challenge just right off the bat. A horror story where the main character gets less afraid as the movie goes on, that takes place over a long period of time and maybe even episodically sort of like moves through the years. That's another big challenge. This is a pretty unconventional horror story in a lot of ways, which is cool. We love unconventional horror and like different approaches and different takes on stuff. My personal thought is, in the logline, I would just lie a little, or not lie, but like present it as if it's more like the experience of watching the movie. So something like, okay, a delusional man, or maybe you don't even need to say he's delusional, but like believing he's trying to save his grandmother's soul, a serial killer, like torments a community or something like that, and then you like, I guess you would need to sort of find. The problem is you don't have one other character that can sort of serve as the antagonist towards that, or the protagonist in this case, right? So I'm not 100% sure what the answer is. We're gonna lose the call in a minute. Apparently, that's okay. We can just reconnect again if we need to. We're winding down in terms of time, just so everyone knows. But and so I feel like I'm not giving great notes on this just because I'm sensing something off, but I just can't articulate what the fix would be. Nick, are you kind of picking up how I'm describing this, or in the sense of like this is a pretty non-traditional setup, right?
Yeah, it definitely is, and I think it's cool. Definitely like working and kicking ass. I think a bit of where it's not bumping, but where it can use a little tweaking is the logline is long. Try to explain almost the whole movie, when I think explaining the setup to us and then letting the viewer or reader experience that for themselves is going to really benefit you. So I think sort of framing it as, someone believing that they're ridding a demon from their family, like does so only to realize they're the true evil, the true villain this whole time, and they've really just been harming a peaceful spirit, essentially.
Yeah,
So-
you got it right on the head. That's a perfect way. Oh,
Yeah, so I think cutting it down to that and then allowing, you have 90, 120 pages to explain the rest of it to us. We don't need all of that in the time. So I think just getting our character, their motivation, and sort of like this sort of general twist in there is going to be really beneficial for getting eyes on the project too, and just like cutting the log line down.
so you think putting the twist in the log line is better?
I do. I would put in there's and then he comes to realize be the real evil in this whole thing, essentially.
Okay.
I would think
Yeah.
also you probably don't need this last part about he needs them to give up their true names. I think you can, like, that seems like sort of the minutia of
Okay.
how it unfolds. And Nick, do you agree? Do you think we like that almost feels like extraneous to the setup to include in the logline?
Sorry about that. I was joining. Hang on, I'm joining
Oh,
this
you're good.
Google call again. Would you mind repeating that?
Sure. I was thinking he could probably cut the part at the end where he says he needs to get them to give up their true names. But if we already know if we already have the setup, then we may not need to go into the minutia of what specifically he's trying to get out of it.
Right. That feels like a cool detail that's going to be pertinent in the story, but I don't think we need it necessarily.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So yeah, that was a bunch of notes and a bunch of thoughts for you, I guess, from both of us. And it's a tricky story, but it's attention grabbing, and it's a different cultural sort of supernatural setup than we normally see, which is exciting. And I think there's a lot of strong stuff there. Just I'm looking at it like as a buyer or as a person that makes horror movies, I would just look at it and be like, this doesn't even sound exactly like a horror movie. So if you could change just the way you present it a little bit I think Nick's revision was a good idea. And then I could sort of see, okay, I can imagine some scare sequences in this movie, or I could start to see what the trailer might look like, or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of strong stuff here. I think it's largely coming down to that sort of sense of presentation and of cutting away from excess information at the beginning.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you for that. All right. I think we're at the end of our time. Let me see. Do we have any quick questions at the end that we've missed? Maybe not. How should we wrap up? Nacho, do you want to weigh in?
Yes. So I was just going to mention, I'll follow up with Connor and Nick afterwards just to see which pitches they like the most.
Oh, I forgot
And
it was
we're
a
gonna-
contest.
Yeah, we got some prizes. We got some custom flip-flops.
Custom flip-flops. Awesome.
Yeah, and we have t-shirts and Script Camp coffee mugs.
Can we get one of those hats that you can put the beer cans in?
Ooh.
A beer drinking hat? Is that real or is that just on TV? I actually don't know.
I've never seen one in the flesh.
Yeah, never in the fields, but they might be out there. They exist, says Megan. Okay, good to know. So, yeah, I guess we will follow up about the prizes. I totally forgot the contest thing, but thank you everyone who participated and shared. I know it takes a lot to get in front of a group and share your early ideas and your very precious work. So thank you everyone for doing that. We are wrapping up for now. So thank you so much, Nick, for joining. This was so very much fun. We loved having you. And for anyone that has joined just for this, we hope you stick around our community where we have lots of events like this. We have weekly workshops and genre meetup groups and writing groups and labs and classes and all kinds of stuff. So we hope that you guys stick around and continue to contribute, and we hope you get a lot out of the Script Camp family of servers.
Thank you all for having me. Really appreciate it, and thanks to everyone who read Lore. It means a lot, and yeah, hope to be in touch here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. Any last thoughts, Nacho?
Oh, just so we do table reads tomorrow and Writer's Voice tonight, which is sort of like table reads for novels, short stories, poems, So just keep an eye out.
Yes, that's tonight, 7 p.m. tonight Pacific, and tomorrow 2 p.m. for the table reads. Okay, I think that wraps us up. Thanks again, everybody who commented, asked questions, and shared, and who read Nick's scripts. Thank you, Nick, for sharing the scripts and for all these great insights. And we'll see you guys soon at your next Script Camp events. Have a great rest of your Saturday.
Thanks, friends.
All right, I think we can